first week of the preseason is over, which means that we have now kind of gotten a little bit of a tiny sliver of an ideal of what the 2019 season might be like. So, as appropriate for this time of the year, I thought it would be appropriate to ruthlessly discuss the job security of many NFL head coaches and tell you which ones I think are going to be fired after very minimal knowledge. Let's check it out. Last year, we saw a ton of head coaches fired. This year, we're probably going to see a ton of head coaches get fired. It seems now the window for head coaches to succeed is like 2 years. Very rarely is somebody who has failed the first 2 years given a third year, unless they're Hugh Jackson. And it seems like the patience for these guys and the eagerness to hire another Sean McVay assistant coach just outweighs logic sometimes. So a lot of guys who aren't supposed to get fired, or maybe should, are going to get fired. But we're going to jump into somebody who I don't even know how they got hired in the first place. And that is Cliff Kingsbury. And I think he has a 2 out of 5 chance of being fired after his first season. Now, I will admit, this Cliff Kingsbury situation and experiment can go one of two ways. It can either end in the Cardinals being smarter than the rest of the NFL, or it could end in how most things like this end, in disaster. Now it can work. His offense could work. He could change the league, yada, yada, yada. This could work, but I just don't think this is going to work. One, because he was the fever pitch hire of the Sean McVay hire his assistants era. I mean, legit, he wasn't even ever an assistant of Sean McVay. He was just a friend, and they put friend of Sean McVay in the press release. So it tells you where their mind was when they were hiring this guy. And I think there's going to be a Sean McVay hangover in like 2 years when all of these guys are getting fired because they shouldn't have got hired in the first place. Now, the number one thing people who are pro Sean McVay always bring to me is, well, what about Johnny Manziel, and what about Patrick Mahomes, and what about Baker Mayfield, and what about Davis Webb? All those guys played quarterback in the NFL, and they were with Cliff Kingsbury. But legitimately, let me ask you this question. When they were with Cliff Kingsbury, is that what you know them for? Any of those 4 names. Johnny Manziel, yes, won the Heisman with Cliff Kingsbury there. But Johnny Manziel was also known for not following the rules, not caring about his playbook, not playing in a system, and kind of just winging it every week. So how much credit does Cliff Kingsbury got? And then we have Baker Mayfield. He had Baker Mayfield. He caught the eye of him, and he knew what was up with him and all of that. But do you know Baker Mayfield from Texas Tech, or do you know him from Oklahoma and the Cleveland Browns? Oh, Oklahoma? Yes, because that is where a real coach got a hold of him and turned him into a Heisman Trophy candidate, and he turned himself into a Heisman Trophy candidate and eventually won the Heisman Trophy. And then there's also Davis Webb, who I remember from being at Cal and not at Texas Tech. And he's not even that great, so I don't even know why he gets thrown in there. And then, of course, we have Patrick Mahomes. And I think Patrick Mahomes is the ideal reason why this dude should not be in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes, this dude somehow gets credit for Patrick Mahomes when all he did was hold back Patrick Mahomes. Look at the talent. Look at everything this dude can do. And he didn't go number 1 overall that year. And you know why Patrick Mahomes didn't go number 1 overall? Because his tape was not great. His tape with Cliff Kingsbury was not up to par. That's Cliff Kingsbury's fault. Cliff Kingsbury held back Patrick Mahomes, but since Patrick Mahomes is one of the most talented QBs of all time, from a raw talent standpoint, he was still able to be drafted in the top 10. So that's more of a credit to the raw talent of Patrick Mahomes than it is to Cliff Kingsbury. So you throw all of that out the window, and what do you have? A guy who was a failing head coach at Texas Tech. You're expecting a dude who failed as a head coach in college to somehow step up to the NFL level and know what he's doing. But he didn't even know what he's doing. And the second thing people are going to tell me is that he's this offensive genius, that he's going to revolutionize the league. And if somebody has never earned that tag and gotten it, it's this dude, Cliff Kingsbury. How is he an offensive genius? Did his offense set minds fire at Texas Tech? Do you remember hearing about how great Texas Tech offense is? Or was it just another Big 12 offense that wasn't Oklahoma or even at the time Baylor? Okay, he never had the top offense in his own conference. What kind of offensive genius is he? All we know is that he had the best quarterbacks, apparently, and he was never able to have the best offense. He was never able to have serious success at Texas Tech. We called Chip Kelly an offensive genius because he had earned that. He had been to national championships. He had done something of tangible measure. Cliff Kingsbury has done nothing at Texas Tech but lose and look cool while doing it. And somehow he's an NFL head coach. I personally see this thing ending as a dumpster fire, as an embarrassment, and it's going to be something that they're going to want to get rid of as soon as possible, but they might not even be able to do that because I think that the Hugh Jackson factor might save Cliff Kingsbury. Nobody wants to be the organization that fired 2 coaches in 1 year back to back. So by default, you're going to have to give somebody who is way less qualified to keep this job another year in order to look sane for the rest of the head coaching pool. You fired 2 guys back to back after 1 year, then, nobody's going to want to coach there. So that is the only thing that may save Cliff Kingsbury, unless this thing works out, which I don't think it's going to work out because why would I believe? What has Cliff Kingsbury done as a coach to make me believe he's going to get the most out of his quarterback? Like, seriously, what has he ever done? Why do I think he's going to get the most out of Kyler Murray? He didn't get the most out of Patrick Mahomes. He didn't get the most out of Baker Mayfield. He got the least out of all of those guys and coasted by on their raw talent and lost a bunch of games. He's probably not going to get the most out of Kyler Murray, in my opinion. The next guy I think has a good chance of getting fired is Ron Rivera, who went 7-9 last year. He has a decent roster, but not a great roster. And I think this all relies on how healthy Cam Newton is going to be. I think this team is going to have high expectations yet again. And I think this roster just isn't built for those expectations, especially if Cam Newton continues to have injury problems, which the way they've used him throughout the years, it just indicates that he will. And if this team has another underwhelming 6-10 or 5-11 season. And I think that's going to be it for Ron Rivera because Cam Newton's at that age where front office are getting a little antsy about finding somebody who can win and utilize their talent at quarterback because the quarterback is so expensive and he's getting older, so that window is closing. So I would expect Ron Rivera to be a casualty of that if they're not able to win 8, 9, 10 games this season. The next guy is a bit of a surprise, and I don't think this is very likely, but I did have to say it. And it's Matt Nagy, the head coach of the Chicago Bears. And I know if you're a Chicago Bears fan and you happen to stumble upon this video, you're thinking, what the hell? He went 12-4 last year, had one of the best seasons in modern Bears history. Why would he be even a threat to lose his job? That is because, one, sports is very not logical when decisions are made. And I think being 12-4 might have set the bar a little high and a little higher than this team can reach. I don't know if this team is set up to go 12-4 again. I think a lot of things went their way in order to go 12-4 last year, and I just don't know if those things are going to be the same. And I think in a situation like that, a letdown, particularly a pretty big letdown, normally ends in people losing their job. And I think this Bears team might not have the luck that they had last year, could end up 6-10. And if that's the case, I think it's very likely that Matt Nagy loses his job after just 2 years, even though he went 12-4 the 1 year. Illogical, crazy things happen like that in the NFL all the time. And if this team does not live up to expectations or even comes close to them, I could see the Bears and them parting ways. The next guy on this list, I think, is probably the most likely guy to get fired, and that's Pat Shermer. He went 5-11 last year. He has a overall head coaching record of 15-34. His team is less talented and directionally they're very confused. They have made moves to build towards the future. They have made moves to win now. Generally, those things don't necessarily work out. And I am interested to see how this Daniel Jones, Eli Manning situation folds out, because it really doesn't take much in a city to start a quarterback controversy. Take my word from it. I have watched quarterback controversies in Cleveland start because of nothing. I mean, the whole Tim Couch quarterback controversy his rookie year, you have to remember, started in the Hall of Fame game, which is barely a preseason game. So it's not crazy to think that one good series in the preseason game is going to get people maybe 3-4 months down the line to start chanting for Daniel Jones to start and start throwing a little bit of a monkey wrench in the New York Giants season. And that's the problem with the Giants. I think their roster isn't that great. They lost a lot of players, a lot of really good players, and they weren't good last year. And I just don't see them getting any better. The only way I see that they improve last year if it's Daniel Jones is immediately ready to start and take over, and if the Giants are ready to fully give him the keys sooner rather than later. I can see this working and they can win 8 games maybe, but right now I think they're probably going to lose more than they did last year. I probably see a 4-12 season, and 4-12 after Pat Shermer's history of like always going 4-12, it's going to get him fired. The next guy is Jon Gruden, and I think he has a pretty likely chance of getting fired this season. He has all the recipes I have seen for a head coach getting fired in his second year. First of all, bad roster. Bad roster. Not enough healthy guys. The guys you got that are healthy, not that good. You've been waiting for Darius Geis for who knows how long to get back from injury. Jonathan Allen, who was supposed to be a game changer at defensive tackle, has not been that at all. And again, just a lack of talent on this Washington Redskins team. And they have a pretty bad quarterback situation. I mean, they have a 3-way competition between Case Keenum, who is a career backup, Colt McCoy, who is even more of a career backup, and of course you can't forget the rookie Dwayne Haskins, who has not looked great so far, but hey, it's early and he's young, and I would expect him to take a year to develop anyways. But see, Dwayne Haskins being ready in a year, that's not going to do Jon Gruden no good, because right now this might be one of the worst, and they have a lot of dysfunction going on right now, one of the worst teams in the NFL, and I don't expect them to win many games, and I think they're a perfect candidate to go 2-14, 3-13, and maybe secure up the first pick in the draft. This kind of smells like 2017, 2016 Browns to me. So take that with what you want, Redskins fans. Don't hate me for telling the truth. The next guy I think could end up not being on his team the next year, and I'm saying that carefully because I have Bruce Arians here, but I don't think he's going to get fired. I think he might just decide he's too old for this stuff and retire. And I think this is kind of likely because, one, Jameis Winston is a head case on the field. He's a head case off the field. And I don't know how much room and how much patience Bruce Arians has to deal with that, especially if this team doesn't win games. And that's the thing. I don't see how this team wins a bunch of games this year. They're not much more improved than they were last year. It would be a surprise if they were to win 10 or 12 games, or at least a credit to how good of a coach Bruce Arians is. But I just don't see it happening. I don't see Jameis Winston finally finding consistency this late in his NFL career. And if this team is mediocre and headed towards a rebuild, because if Jameis is not a superstar this year, he is not going to get re-signed, then, well, is Bruce Arians going to stay for that? No, I think he's just rather retired if that's the case. I think that's not that far-fetched in happening for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the next guy on this list is Matt Patricia, who went 6-10 last year. And Matt Patricia is on this list because he is in the same spot that Ron Rivera is. He is reliant on a quarterback who has necessarily not proven himself to be more than a solid starting quarterback, to drag his team above mediocrity because the team's roster just, quite frankly, is not that great. And I think that the Lions more than likely are going to be less than 6-10 And Matt Patricia is probably going to be another fired Bill Belichick tree hire. Now we're going to move into some dark horses. Guys, I don't really expect to be fired, but if they were, I wouldn't be that surprised. And the first name on this list is a surprising one, depending on, which part of the nation you live in. That's Mike Tomlin. I say that because I went to school in Youngstown. I've met a lot of Steelers fans in my day. They always want to fire Mike Tomlin for whatever reason. But right now, it's really not hard to imagine that the Steelers finish in third place and don't land a wild card spot, and the pitchforks come out for Mike Tomlin, because then he doesn't have the excuse of Antonio Brown, doesn't have the excuse of the Le'Veon Bell contract situation. And I think that could be something that ends up with him being fired, but I don't really expect that, just because that's not how Pittsburgh tends to handle business. I think for like 30 other NFL teams, that's not a far-fetched scenario at all, but for this particular team, it's probably not a reality. I don't think he is going to get fired this year, but I think in like 2-3 years, it could be a real possibility that he can end up taking a resignation or being fired after Ben retires, and this team, more than likely with how they're set up now, does not have a future quarterback. Next guy who is on the kind of hot seat, but I don't really expect him to get fired for other reasons, is Jon Gruden. I think the move to Vegas could save him. It could also end him. But I think ultimately what's going to save him is that the Raiders don't really have that much money, and I don't think they really want to pay Jon Gruden out for the rest of this contract on top of paying for somebody else, seeing how they couldn't pay to keep Khalil Mack last year. But let's face it, the Raiders have Antonio Brown. And Antonio Brown has proven before really the preseason has hit its meat, that he can bring the circus to town. And boy, has he chosen to bring the circus to town. Somehow, Hard Knocks is in Oakland, and Antonio Brown has overshadowed the entire Hard Knocks with his displeasure of a helmet. Can you imagine what kind of monster this dude is going to be during the season? Whether he plays for the team or not, he is going to be a huge shadow looming over this team that is probably going to cause more dysfunction, more distrust, and a already old and really shaky roster. And this team was mediocre last year. With this hanging over them, they could be disastrous. They could be a complete dumpster fire, and that could get Jon Gruden fired, because sure, they want him in Las Vegas so they can attract fans in Las Vegas. But if he has proven through 2 years to coach a complete dumpster fire, that brand of Jon Gruden is not going to mean anything anymore. It might even mean so little at the end of this year, to the point to where it would be better for the Raiders to cut bait and just bring somebody else in to give fans new hope, because that's how bad the Jon Gruden era has the potential to be this year. The next guy I don't really expect to get fired, but I could easily see how they can get fired, is Kyle Shanahan, who went 4-12 last year. He and Garoppolo have to win, and Garoppolo has to stay healthy. It is too expensive for them not to win and for Garoppolo not to stay healthy. Last year, I feel like a lot of fans gave it a pass. This year, I don't think that pass is going to be given. I think people are just going to be irritated with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think people are going to start comparing him to Sam Bradford if he gets injured again. And it's just going to become a whole circus. And then you also have the situation where Jimmy Garoppolo is healthy the whole year, but what if he's not that good? I mean, people have already started to compare this dude to Joe Montana. If he is not a Pro Bowler and he's healthy this season, who are they going to blame? Certainly not going to be Jimmy Garoppolo. it's going to be Kyle Shanahan, and they will send him out of town and kick Kyle Shanahan out because they just have so much money invested in Jimmy Garoppolo that they really can't blame it on him. So that is an easy situation to see how Kyle Shanahan gets fired. I don't think it's going to happen because I think that Kyle Shanahan and Jimmy Garoppolo are probably going to be a good team this year, a solid team, maybe even contend for the division this year. So I don't think that's going to be the case, but you could easily see how that could happen. And that is it for the predictions of who's going to get fired. And let me know in the comment section who you think is going to be fired, because every year coaches are fired that we don't expect to be fired, and I think it's a good conversation to have. But let me know in the comment section down below who you think it is that's going to get fired next. And if you like these videos, if you like what I have to say, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload. And if you have a buck or two a month to spare, please consider joining the Patreon and having your name added to this exclusive bar at the bottom of the screen. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and have a great day. Have a good night.